Hello, everyone. Howie here. January 24th, Friday. Where to begin? Same place. This is where we begin. I put things into the pot. I stir the sauce. I let it simmer, and I take a taste. And I originally had one plan, one direction, and I think God has another one for me because something came up this morning. I started looking at it, talked to producer lady, and I said, I'm going that direction because it's hitting home. So later found the groundwork. I wake up. I am doing this new thing where I don't touch a phone or a computer for hours in the morning. No electronics. Just wake up, and you know what? I fill the time. Of course, you fill the time. And sometimes I fill the time with just sitting on the couch, staring out the window or staring at the wall. Watching my cat. And also, I read a lot more. I take notes. It's beautiful. It's like it reminds me of what I used to do when I was a lot younger. Really, honestly, before cell phones, and digital screens, touch pads. I think that was a big shift in our society when we could begin to lose. Even the BlackBerry, we used to hit a button was it had a connection to a mechanical connection. You push the button, even if it was a digital connection. It was you still were under the impression that you were pushing a mechanism. Now with the touch screen, everything. I remember I had a friend, and he had a young daughter, a little bit younger than mine. And I remember he said to me, because she always had the pad. It was that generation, right? Raised on the iPad. And he said that there was a magazine on the coffee table, and she went over to the magazine and she like was trying to swipe on the actual paper of the magazine because and you think, wow, what a different physical. The physical life is different than 20 years ago. It's absolutely incredible. Anyway, so here I am. I've been reading my book here, and I'm going to start with this, and then we got some really, really good stuff today, and inspired and real and cultural and political, and maybe not exactly what you're hearing from everyone else. I'm taking a little broader scope, right? We have to Friday, right? Friday is the day that Jesus is crucified, right? Every Friday we relive his crucifixion, and we await the resurrection on Sunday. So there is to me, is a bigger scope day. It's a spiritual day. It's a religious day, but in the truest sense, it's true that it's a religious day in the sense that food is religious, right? And marriage is religious, and sex is religious. Everything has a sacramental meaning. Everything's sacramental. Everything has a divine meaning, right? Eternal significance. Okay, so I'm reading this Intellectual Life. I've told you about it before, and it's about what do you do if you're called to be an intellectual? How do you plan your day? It's like a practical guide. It's got a lot of philosophical meaning in it. It's written by a Dominican priest about 100 years ago, which is crazy because now I see things that have copyright in 1920. And I'm like, it's 100 years, right? I mean, I remember growing up, you read something in the 20s. It was a long time ago, but now it's 100 years. Life is going by. All right. So, of course, I've talked about this before, and I'm going to continue to talk about it because if we set our stage, first things first, we get ourselves grounded in the Lord, where does he want us to go today? Not ask him to come with us, but us to go with his will out into the new day. He plants the blessings. They're already out there. We just have to discover them. So here we are. And you're going to see how this all connects because it's really, really good stuff. By the way, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Tell your friends. Keep comments coming. I almost did a whole show on comments, but the Lord said no. I believe he said no, so I'm listening. I'm trying to obey. All right, so this is what I read this morning, and this part I'm just going to read like one paragraph just to kind of set you to where I am. And he's talking. So if you have this commitment to the intellectual path, and I think it's important. He pointed out too that this, of course, can apply to any pursuit, but any vocation, any calling to like a specific road, and it could be the intellect, the artist, the painter, the craftsman, the financial economic mind, the parenting. If you feel a direct vocation, a calling, it's not an assignment, that's a job, a calling, a state of life, the state of life of being married, state of life of being a teacher, state of life of being a politician, a single life, religious life. There's all kinds of callings. And it doesn't change. Your assignment within that calling may change. Where you teach, right? How you teach, who you teach, but a teacher, okay? Same with parenting. You're a parent. To who? To 1, to 3, to 5, maybe to children that aren't actually your biological children, but you're a parent. You help nurture them and help people grow in personal development. And the role of the mother is different than the role of the father. By the way, what a sense of relief the entire world is feeling by Trump saying that there's only two sexes. You can feel it. You can feel a release that this harness was this girdle was around our neck. This yoke, this heavy yoke, wasn't the Lord's yoke, right? My yoke is easy, my burden is light. This was a heavy yoke because it wasn't from God. It was a ambiguity. We live in the shadows and ambiguity, and it's heavy. And Trump, boom, it was like a curse. Like a curse was broken. I was watching, what's the show? The Chosen. It's great. And Jesus sends out the disciples two by two, right? And he gives them the authority to heal and cast out the demons. And the parts where they do a nice job. Your director does a nice job of like, what does it look like to cast out a demon and the person's violent and then there's like this kind of motion, right? Like, be gone. And that it reminds me of, like, there's two sexes. It was a strong, powerful breaking of a curse. That was a curse laid upon our world, not just our culture, but the culture worldwide, because it was spreading and spreading, and boom, it broke. All right. So this is what he says about this path. When you have a chosen path, all roads but one are bad roads for you. So that when you have a vocation, all roads but one are bad for you, since they diverge from the direction in which your action is expected and required. Do not prove faithless to God, to your brethren, and to yourself by rejecting a sacred call. See that? A vocation. Not vocation. Vocation, VO, is a call, sacred call. Never apologize for it, because it may disappoint those around you, your parents, it may confuse people. But if you believe you have a call from God to go on a certain path of career or purpose, more than career, purpose, well, then you must. You must. That's why Jesus, that hard line, forsake your mother and father for me. He doesn't mean, of course, he loves family. He loves his mother, right? But the point is that sometimes we have to leave that's what is closest to us on a human side in order to fulfill what God has in mind, in order to serve humanity as a whole. I love this stuff, and it's so internally consistent and externally expansive and beautiful. True, good, and beautiful. Here we go. Wait to see what I got for you. I'm going to read one more paragraph. That presupposes you come to the intellectual life or any other life you feel called to with unselfish motives, not through ambition or foolish vanity. The jingling bells of duplicity tempt only frivolous minds. Ambition offends eternal truth by subordinating truth to itself. Is it not a sacrilege to play with the questions that dominate life and death, with mysterious nature, with God, to achieve some literary or philosophical celebrity at the expense of the true and independently of the true? Such aims, and especially the first mentioned, would not sustain the seeker. His effort would speedily be seen to slacken, his vanity to fall back on some empty satisfaction, with no care for the reality of things. He says it beautifully. I jumbled it, but I'm going to summarize it for myself. Our intentions have to be pure and right and just, a whole heart, an undivided heart. Not divided. This part for me, that part for God. This part to be charitable, no, and this part to be praised. We're not charitable in order to receive the praise or our name on the wall. We pursue truth, not become famous philosophers. And I have to check myself with this show, right? I'm asking you for likes and comments. Why? I'm guilty. I'm guilty. We're all guilty. I can't speak for you, but I'm guilty. So I put it down in front of you. I put it on the altar and I say, Lord, purify my heart, purify my mind, purify the show. Let it be truly about the truth, reality, progress, growth, expansion, true godly culture that he wants. Our God Almighty, creator of the universe, Jesus, his son, and the Holy Spirit, that he wants, that the Trinity wants. And any religion that's in line with the oneness of the truth. And there are many. Okay? If you believe in one religion, it doesn't mean you have to reject the other religions. You just believe that your religion is full, it's complete. The other ones may be 99%, but not. So that's all we're saying. There's a lot of truth in other religions. And a lot of people may think that my religion is wrong, but they can acknowledge that maybe whatever percentage, is right. We live in a pluralistic society now. And that's what we're going to talk about today. There's some big stuff going on in the news, big stuff going on in the world, big real politics stuff. But this is important to lay the groundwork. It's always important to be real and authentic. So there it is. Watch the bells and whistles. What's that line there? I always say bells and whistles. This guy, the jingling bells of publicity tempt only frivolous minds. I'm a frivolous mind because I guess I'm tempted. Ambition offends eternal truth. Ambition offends eternal truth. Isn't it sacrilege to play with the questions that dominate life and death? Yes. So we cleanse it. We cleanse it right now. We cleanse it and we put it aside. And I put the book down and I begin. And I begin. And I begin. Let us begin. Imprimis. Now, Hillsdale, I love Hillsdale, right? Let me see. Hold it up. There's imprimis, right? Imprimis means first things. First things. First things first. Where do you begin? See? Imprimis. Imprimis has this publication. Excuse me. Hold on a second. I think I pulled out my microphone. There we go. Let me fix it. All right. And producer lady. Good talk with her. And we're excited. All right. Got to grow incrementally and steadily and with so many good comments coming in. All right. I digress and I get focused. Here we go. So I got this in the mail, I think 2 days ago. Imprimis is a 6.6 million readers. This is for for the December issue. Okay. Religious Liberty and the Genius of the American Founding. This is by Glenn Elmers. And I'm only going to read the very beginning of it. And Mr. Elmers he's a research fellow in the American Founding at the Claremont Institute. Okay. This is a very nice piece. And if you're not subscribed, it's free. You can contact Imprimis. I'm sure you go to the website, you sign up, you get it every month. And it's a great, great source. So I'm going to read the very beginning because this is what changed my day. It was sitting there underneath my books like this on the coffee table, right? And I take it out this morning because I made room. This book told me to make room. Rob told me to make room, stay healthy. So I made room, and then this floats to the top. See, God, that's how he works. And I read the beginning, and then it just shifted everything because there's other stories going on in the news. I was going to really talk about the pardons and go into depth on that, but and maybe we will at a later time. But I want to talk about faith and the state, faith and our freedom, faith in Trump, faith in our brothers and sisters around the world, and the importance of safety and reality. Okay. So let me read this. The first paragraph. I'll pull it up and I'll share it with you because that's how technical I am, right? I'll share it with you because I can, because we have that technology and the power to do it. All right. And here we go. So I share. Oops. No, I want to share. Hold on a second. 1 minute. Okay. I messed up. All right. I'm going to share my screen. That's what I'm sharing. And here it is, Hillsdale. All right. Sorry about that. Thanks for hanging with me. All right. You got it? Do you see it? You see it. Perfect. All right. Hillsdale. Religious Liberty and the Genius of the American Founding by Glenn Elmers. I'm going to read the beginning. One of the most beautiful things written during the American founding period is George Washington's 1790 letter to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island. Washington had visited Newport in August of that year, and shortly after his visit, one of the leaders of the Jewish community sent Washington a letter thanking him and congratulating him on his conduct as president. Washington responded in part. Now, this is the letter George Washington sent back, and it's magnificent. Washington to the congregation, the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island. The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of, as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while every one shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. May the Father of all mercies scatter light and not darkness in our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here, and in his own due time and way everlastingly happy. This is what Elmers says here. I'll just say the one part. Washington here magnificently summarizes the principle of religious liberty, a principle at the heart of the American founding and one of the greatest accomplishments in human history. Today, this principle has been under assault thanks to the vicious anti-Semitism we have seen on many college campuses recently, or the persecutions of Christians by our federal government. The faith of the American Christians and Jews has been mocked and increasingly threatened by an aggressively secular, even atheistic ruling class. So let's break it down. Right? It's a beautiful pace. He goes on and on, obviously. This is just the beginning. But he does point out one thing about why our founding, because the natural rights, right? The natural use of reason to figure things out, to discover the natural world, a world created by God. That's how you combine the two. You know, it's not a society that is a religious society. One has always been one religion for thousands of years that controlled each society. And now there are pockets of movement in that direction, right? With More in England, and Aquinas talked about it. But really until the American experiment, where you have natural law, right, and God. Natural law being we could use reason to discover the world and truths, most of them, not all of them. And then there's also revelation by God, who created the same world that we're using reason to discover. So God creates man, gives him reason, ability to think and explore. We use that reason given by God to explore the world created by God to discover most of the truths. See how they combine it? And in that is the freedom of good conscience to practice that worship any which way you may, as long as you don't infringe upon another's. Doesn't mean God has to be removed. No, not at all. It means that the state can't force one religion, one view upon everyone else. The state cannot say everybody must be Christian. But of course, you can be Christian, and you can be Christian in any way you wish, in any capacity you want, as long as that's not passing a law or a statute to determine that others must agree. Okay? We're not a theocracy. That's the key. I want to look at this letter by Washington. A man who truly believes wrote this and truly believes in the American, and of course, he's the general who won the war, who led us, who did not want to be king. He could have been king of America. But no, of course, we just freed ourselves of not just one king, but the idea of having a king. That's why America's there. The idea of having a king is what we defeated, not one king, not that king, in order for me to become king. No. Each man is his king of his own kingdom. The American experiment, property rights, liberty, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, religious liberty. All possess alike liberty of conscience. They all possess this, not one group or another. And this is beautiful. It is now no more that toleration, because there were societies that were dominated by one religion, that was an official religion, that tolerated, like in Europe at times, they tolerated the Jewish community. The official religion was one thing or another, but they tolerate. No, now he's saying it's not about toleration, as if it was by the indulgence of one class. One class is so superior that they tolerate the other one. No. And that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. You see the language? Natural rights. You have a right to exist. It's just a natural right by who God made you. For happily the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, no bigotry, to persecution no assistance, no persecution, requires that only they who live under its protection, under the protection of the Constitution, as part of a citizen, should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. And not only be a good citizen, but support these ideas that God made all men equal, right? Like a pursuit of life, liberty, happiness, to support them. May the children of the stock of Abraham, what a beautiful way. May our Jewish brothers and sisters who dwell on this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of other inhabitants, while every one shall sit safely under his own vine and fig tree, using the Old Testament imagery in American embodiment of your own home. It's your castle. Every man became a lord of the manor. The American experiment is so awesome. So exciting. I'm reading another book here that you should pick up, Radicalism of the American Revolution by Gordon S. Wood, a longtime professor at Brown. He was one of the signatories or authors of the letter that fought back against the 1619 Project that tried to redo history as the primary force behind the American Revolution was slavery, and it wasn't. It was liberty. Okay? The movement of America was about liberty in every dimension. All right. By the way, do you see how he also say, may the Father of all mercy scatter light and not darkness in our paths, right? Get rid of the technology, sit in silence, let some space for God to fill. That's the light. And make us all in our several vocations. I honestly, I didn't even know that word was there. And I talk about vocations. This is why you stir the soup and you taste it and it becomes real. God is real and he's active in our lives and he's telling us what to think about. He's pointing things out to us. The world is like an incredible museum of beauty and goodness and truth. And God's our tour guide, the Holy Spirit. If we just listen, he points things out that we don't notice. We might not notice. We won't notice if we're staring at our phones. Step back. Let silence. Let the pond still. Vocations. All right. So where does this bring me? I'm going to go to my next. We're going to get into it now. Okay. So Trump yesterday, he announced that he's going to pardon these pro-lifers. This is not the topic, by the way. The topic's a different topic. and these pro-lifers who were protesting in front of abortion clinics, and they were put in jail. I mean, it's just crazy. They were put in jail. And it made me think about, again, connection of freedom of expression and religious liberty. Okay. But what really I want to talk about right now is here. Okay. Let me share it with you. And here it comes. All right. Am I sharing? Here it is. This pops up. You see, one thing leads to another. And I'm like, this is the path, man. This is from Yeshiva World News. Mark Levin posted this on X. I saw it and I went into it and I said, okay, this is along the line of the religious freedom. George Washington writing a letter to the Hebrews of the congregation, Hebrew congregation in Rhode Island. The books I'm reading, my love for true faith, and my brothers and sisters who are pursuing God in any dimension that they choose fit according to their soul, their being. And then the warning. And then the warning of what some people in this world are trying to do. That's the antithesis of what George Washington wrote in that beautiful letter. That they're not only going back to toleration, but beyond that, they're persecuting. They're denying anti-Semitism. Yeshiva World News. Never again. Survey finds majority believe a Holocaust-scale genocide of Jews could happen today. A survey finds majority believe a Holocaust-scale genocide of Jews could happen today. The fact that a majority believe it could, tells you what people perceive and see. This is January 23rd, 2025. It's a picture of Auschwitz. I've been to Auschwitz. I've told you about it. It was a remarkable experience, a painful experience, a disturbing experience going to Auschwitz. There's a movie called The Champion on Netflix, and it takes place in Auschwitz. I recommend it highly, The Champion. All right, here we go. A new survey conducted by the Conference of Jewish Material Claims Against Germany has found that a majority of people in 7 countries believe a genocide against Jewish people similar to the Holocaust could happen today. The findings also highlight a concerning decline in knowledge about the Holocaust, particularly among younger generations. Shameful. The survey polled adults. I mean, are we surprised, though, when we have whole months dedicated to rainbow and not to Holocaust? The survey polled adults in the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Austria, Germany, Poland, Hungary, and Romania. I mean, think about those states, those countries. United States, of course, where many, many Jews came after World War I and by World War II. By the way, anti-Semitism was in many places besides Germany. Of course, Germany was the monster, but there was anti-Semitism in many places, including here in France. But of course, Germany under Hitler, the monster. The worst, maybe perhaps the worst. What else could be worse than the Holocaust? A friend of mine just came back from Amsterdam. He visited the Anne Frank house, and to this day, people, it's still, when you visit Auschwitz, when you visit the Jewish museums, the Holocaust museums, when you visit like Anne Frank house, it's so. I remember being in Tübingen, Germany, as a young man studying and realizing that those train tracks were the tracks. Those are the tracks that they rounded people up and put them on trains to send them to camps. It's unbelievable. And our young people are losing the knowledge of it, or never gaining the knowledge. It's our job. In the Old Testament, drill Moses, like drill these truths into your children. That's your job. You don't just raise them. You don't just give them food and shelter. You give your dog that. You give your horse food and shelter. Then what makes us different? The mind, the spirit, the soul, the conscience. And that has to be directed toward the Almighty. You have to remind your children that they are the princes and princesses of the eternal universal king, the king of the universe. And with that, the reminders of where we, the children of that king, have denied him and hurt others, hurt our brothers and sisters. Everyone's our brother and sister, whether they have our faith or not. Every human being is created by God, therefore everyone is related. You could say related in different capacities by their belief, but no child on this earth, and everyone comes into this earth as a child at conception. There's no human being that comes into existence that's not from God. God creates all humans. We have to remind ourselves of that. It sounds crazy that we do. It's like crazy, but we also have to remind ourselves that there's only a men and women. But we have to, because darkness is real and evil is real. And we have to remember, every child conceived and life begins at conception is from God. And no matter what happens on that journey, they're still from God. And God loves them. Him, her. All right? Let's remember that. The survey polled adults in the United States, United Kingdom, France, Austria, Germany, Poland, Hungary, Romania, areas that were horribly affected from the Holocaust, right? So it's not like areas that weren't involved. The results were released ahead of the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz on January 27th. In the United States, by the way, do you realize that the amount of people, if you do the stats, if you look at the stats of how many Russians were lost freeing Europe from Nazis. We always take the United States won, United States, of course we did our part, but the loss of the Russians, and now all we want to do is fight with them. No. The Russian citizens, the humans, those humans created by God, we need to embrace a peace mindset. We can't be naive. We have to protect our interest, but we have to and Trump's doing it. Trump's going to do it. We pray for peace. We pray, as J.D. Vance said the other day when he was swearing in Marco Rubio, that the fact that we have to even be reminded that the purpose of our foreign policy is peace. Peace. That's the overriding goal, isn't it? Peace. Peace through strength, not false peace by conceding and just giving our enemies what they want so they don't bother us for a little while, because that's not really peace. That's a stalled surrender that leads to really the lack of the opposite of peace, which is being dominated or attacked or loss of all the principles, and one of those principles being freedom of religion, religious liberty. See how it's all connected? So it has to be balanced to put on the table. You don't listen to just one politician or one expert. Everything on the table, and those politicians make decisions. Just like we make decisions, we get all the information, our health, our doctors, right? Our taxes, we put on the table, we make decisions. In the United States, 76% of respondents said they believed another Holocaust could occur. Wow. Followed by 76% think another Holocaust could happen. Think about that. 69% UK, 63% France, 62% Austria, 61% Germany, 54% Poland, and 52% Hungary. Romania had the lowest percentage with 44% considering such a scenario possible. It's interesting, the United States is highest. Is it because the people they're asking know that it's not being taught? Germany, we know it's taught. We know that they're reminded, right? Maybe Romania, because Romania is closest to being under the rule of communism, right? It wasn't long ago. But us, in our freedom was not appreciated. And these unions, the teachers' unions and the curriculums in our public schools, so busy pushing the woke and all this other stuff that the Holocaust is forgotten. The survey also reveals significant gaps, this is interesting, in Holocaust knowledge. People underestimated the number of Jewish victims, with 18 to 28% believing that 2 million or fewer Jews were killed. Were more likely to believe the death toll had been exaggerated. There it is. Where do you think they get that impression that the numbers are exaggerated? They're being told that it's exaggerated. It's implied by some that it's exaggerated. That's how you also end up people on college campuses in their early 20s, late teens, early 20s, holding up Hamas flags. That's how that disgusting behavior arises. In France, 46% of young adults said they were unfamiliar with the Holocaust. Whoa. 46% of young adults said they were unfamiliar with the Holocaust, compared to 15% in Romania, 14% Austria, 12% in Germany. Overall, 1 in 5 French adults reported they had not heard of the Holocaust or were unsure if they had. What? 1 in 5 French adults? Wow, reported they had not heard of the Holocaust or unsure if they had. Wow. When asked to name Nazi concentration camps, nearly half of Americans, 48%, could not identify a single one out of the more than 40,000 camps and ghettos established during World War II. A quarter of respondents across all countries also failed to name any camps or ghettos. Holocaust denial and distortion were identified as significant issues, particularly in the U.S. and Hungary, where respondents reported denial was more prevalent. Despite the troubling trends, there is a broad global consensus on the importance of Holocaust education. More than 90% of the respondents in all countries agreed that teaching about the Holocaust is essential to ensure history does not repeat itself. Amen, I agree. Gideon Taylor, president of the Claims Conference, called the gaps in knowledge, quote, deeply concerning, close quote, emphasizing the need for more effective Holocaust education. Wow. Quote, the alarming gaps in knowledge, particularly among younger generations, highlight an urgent need for more effective Holocaust education, he said. Matthew Brofman, head of the team that commissioned the report, struck a hopeful note, pointing to the widespread report for Holocaust education. Now our task is clear. We must make this mandate and make it happen, he said. This is from their world headquarters in New York City. So there you go. We can't forget. If you read the New Old Testament, you see that the Jewish people are constantly reminded not to forget their past, right? That's why they have their holidays. We have to remember what happened to them. We need to remember what happened, like we do with 9/11, Holocaust, and Pearl Harbor Day. And we need to remember. Atomic bomb. We need to remember. Because the threat of war and nuclear exchange is terrifying, and we must stay diligent, and also persecution of individuals, from the individual persecution to the worldwide nuclear holocaust, right? Nuclear winter, right? Where the climate would change. It doesn't take much. There's interesting books and there's a lot of research to be done, but certain things are clear. We need to stay diligent. All right, that leads me to my next, which is, this is, I'm going to share a Twitter post, an X post. I don't know what you call it. Do you call him Twitter post anymore? We'll see. This is from, he's a Fox correspondent. His name is Trey Yingst, leading voice in war reporting. Okay. He is a chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. Okay. He's a photojournalism for experienced humans. All right. New York Times bestseller of Black Sunday. He has this post here. Let me go down and get it. It's here. He posted this on January 23rd. Iran is rapidly accelerating uranium enrichment closer to weapons grade levels. Their breakout time for a nuclear weapon is measured in weeks. Quote, they are pressing the gas pedal, close quote. UN nuclear watchdog chief Rafael Grossi warned on Wednesday. Iran is rapidly accelerating uranium enrichment closer to weapon grade levels. Their breakout time for a nuclear weapon is measured in weeks. Why do I point this out in connection? Because Iran. They despise Israel. Right? They were behind the October 7th massacre. Right? And they have threatened Israel with nuclear, with complete annihilation if they have the ability. So That's from that, and I went, and I'm going to go get this UN watchdog chief Rafael Grossi. So let me bring that up, because that's what we do here. I really do spend time. I hope you feel. Of course, you have to do your own research and don't trust everything I say. But I give you my word that I do try to be clear. I try to follow up sources. I want to make sure that each person I'm looking at is someone who has degree of credibility that's worth paying attention to. And and then I follow up on the direct resource. That's like with the executive orders. Go to the executive orders directly and read them when you can. All right. So this is what. So I went. I want to get this Grossi guy from UN, and yeah, I found it. And we share that. We'll just read it, just a brief part, just to verify what this Fox correspondent is saying is accurate. And I once again thank you for those of you that are allowing me into your lives in terms of listening to the show and passing on the word, and I love it, and I'm humbled by the responsibility of it. Really, I take it seriously. Whether it's a very small audience or very big, like that book said, I feel calling to share. I'm not a news service. I'm not a journalist. I'm giving my take. I'm sharing my journey with you, and it's your journey through the dialogue back. So it's our journey, and thank you. I don't take it for granted. Reuters. This is from January 22nd, 2025. So this is the day before the Fox correspondent's tweet. Iran is pressing the gas pedal. That's the exact quote. So you see how they line up, and it's important to verify in this world because there's a lot of information out there. We can't take everything at face value. Reuters. Iran is pressing the gas pedal on uranium enrichment, IAEA chief says. This is by Leila de Cresta. Okay. Reuters. There he is, Director General. He looks like a UN guy, doesn't he? Wow. Look at that tie. He must be an Italian. Is he Italian? International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi arrives on the opening day of the agency's quarterly Board of Governors meeting at the headquarters in Vienna, Austria. Okay. Here we go. Davos, Switzerland, January 22nd, Reuters. Iran is pressing the gas pedal on its enrichment of uranium to near weapons grade, UN watchdog chief Rafael Grossi said on Wednesday, adding that Iran's recently announced acceleration in enrichment was starting to take effect. Grossi said last month that Iran had informed the International Atomic Energy Agency that it would, quote unquote, dramatically accelerate enrichment of uranium to up to 60% purity, closer to the roughly 90% weapons grade. So it's a matter of the purity, okay? And for energy is one level, for weapons grade is another. So they're going up to 60%. 90% is what you need for weapons grade. Just two more paragraphs. Western powers called the step a serious escalation and said there was no civil justification for enriching to that level and that no other country had done so without producing nuclear weapons. So that's what I just summarized for you. So it's the percentage of purity, and that no other country, there's no civil justification. There's no use for that level, except for producing weapons, and no other country has ever gone to that level without producing nuclear weapons. So all indications point that this is where they're going, and we knew that. And the deal that Obama struck with them, and it's been a debacle, the American policy toward Iran. Iran has said its program, and the Iranian people, this isn't with the Iranian people. The Iranian people want to be free. They want to live peacefully. Just like citizens of all nations a great majority want to live lives like we live. Not the same, but when I say like we live, lives of our own conscience, that we live and breathe the way we want to live. Not these extremists, not just a few leaders, but just the people. They want to live. They want to raise their children. They want to work and make money and then remind their children that they're blessed from God. They come from God and they're blessed by God. But the Iranian leaders won't allow it. They won't allow a democratic Iran. Iran said its program is entirely peaceful and has the right to enrich uranium to any level it wants. Quote, before it was producing more or less 7 kilograms of uranium enriched to up to 60% per month. Now it's above 30 or or more than that. So it's increased. So I think it is clear indication of an acceleration. They are pressing the gas pedal, Grossi told reporters at the World Economic Forum in Davos. According to an International Atomic Energy yardstick, about 42 kilograms of uranium enriched to that level is enough to, in principle, if enriched further, for one nuclear bomb. Grossi said Iran currently had about 200 kilograms of uranium enriched to up to 60%. So, yeah, there it is. All right. Still, he said it would take time to install and bring online the extra centrifuges, machines that enrich uranium, but that the acceleration was starting to happen. We're going to start seeing steady increases from now, he said. All right. So that verifies the Fox correspondent report. It's a concern. So why? Why do we go from the great George Washington and the statement of faith? George, first to start with Trump and pardoning these pro-life people who were prosecuted unfairly under the Biden administration, and quickly just from that story go to the beauty of Washington's letter to the Hebrew congregation in Rhode Island about what true religious liberty is. And then a reminder that young people are not being educated properly about the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism on the rise. We saw it in the universities. And then Iran, the enemy of the Jewish people, the leaders of Iran, the government of Iran. And we need to always distinguish between the people of a country and its leaders. Sometimes very similar, sometimes not. All right. Let me go here. And I share the next. So we got confirmation that Iran, and now why? Okay. And this is a side note that's important. And it's about the geopolitics of the whole nature and why Trump has a really important mission here. And we pray. What do we pray for? We pray for peace. So here I go. I'm sharing with you the Wall Street Journal, and it's just going to be the first paragraph. Make sure I'm sharing. I am. All right. This is what I want to show you. The Wall Street Journal is reporting. This is from January 23rd by Lawrence Norman and Benoit Faucon. China is helping supply chemicals for Iran's ballistic missile program. This is not nuclear, but ballistic missile. Tehran's weapons program got pummeled last year. Now it's relying on Beijing to rebuild. Okay, Beijing to rebuild. And Iran's president, next to a display of missiles at a ceremony in Tehran on Thursday to commemorate the death of the general who was killed in a U.S. drone attack in 2020. 2 Iranian ships docked in China have been loaded with a critical ingredient to produce propellant for ballistic missiles. People familiar with the matter said, a demonstration of the challenge the Trump administration will have in pressing China to reduce its cooperation with Iran. So here we go. Here's the groundwork, right? We have China, Iran, and Russia. And then we have the West, of course, led by the United States. This Ukraine debacle has to be resolved. There is no reason that we can't be peaceful with Russia. The history of this is so interesting. I'm going to go into it in different shows, about Kennedy, and also the Kennedy assassination papers, being all the files are going to be released, declassified. And why was Kennedy assassinated? A lot of people believe it was because he actually made overtures to have peace with Russia. And his great speech, his last major speech before he was assassinated at American University, right? And his overtures to Khrushchev, and Khrushchev seeming to be open, and then maybe some forces don't want that peace or that relationship. But why? Why can't, and then, the obsession with people thinking if they take Ukraine, then they're going to move into Poland. And there's really no signs of that. Okay. And it's complicated. The relationship of Russia mainland with Ukraine and certain, there were treaties, there were agreements. It's complex. But if you break it down from, when I say both sides, it's not, when you look at both sides, you don't mean that you're equating them or saying one's right or that they're both right. No, you could believe one's really wrong, one's right, but you can still look at both sides. You can start to, and maybe use a little, and then you say, okay, and then that's how you have to understand where the other parties are coming from. So the situation in Ukraine is very complex. Okay. And then the presumption of certain people that that's going to lead, if he takes Ukraine, he's going to come right into Europe. And because it's a NATO issue, it's very complex. And I really do believe that Russia and the United States can be at peace. We're not at peace right now. You're not at peace right now when Biden gave permission for U.S. missiles to be fired from Ukraine into Russian soil, onto Russian soil. That's not a peace. It's like proxy war. Okay, so Trump's in. Trump will deal with Putin. But this is why it's so important, because if you can have peace with Russia, well, then China is a separate issue. You deal with them through trade, okay, and then Iran gets isolated. But right now, what Biden did is by taking this stance with Ukraine and other positions, they pushed Russia away, pushed China away, which brings China and Russia together, and they use Iran. And Iran's not isolated. They got these two big brothers. So this is why all this is tied together. So China helping Iran. Iran supporting Hamas. Hamas, October 7th. Our closest ally, one of our closest allies, Israel. And the destruction of human life based on religion, which brings us back to one of the principles of our great nation. And George Washington's letter, and Trump pardoning those people who have a right to protest about the closing of abortion centers. Okay, there will course details we can discuss, but that's when you fly high. You're not flying high like a drone, because that's fly high like an eagle, and you see things from above. China, Russia, Iran, Middle East, Hamas, Gaza, Israel, Europe, NATO, Canada, Mexico, United States, borders, trade, relationship, broad, macro, like an eagle. St. John, the eagle, you fly above, and then you come down into the situation. You come down like the eagle does into the lake, and it grabs the fish that it's after, and it deals with that. It takes its food. And that's what we need to do. We need, as human beings, to fly high and then understand and then come down and deal with the situation that we need to deal with. This is not a good sign. China helping supply chemicals for Iran's ballistic missile. Isn't Iran sent missiles into Israel, didn't they? Thank God the missile shield, the protection, they shot down the missiles. But where do those missiles? So now China's helping them. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Trump and Putin and Russia and the United States and the trade deals with China. Okay, leads me. I'm going to go to the next one. I got them right in a row. This is really good. I'm proud of this, actually, because I think I feel inspired by it. Okay. Why? I'm going to read one article, though, before I go into what Trump's first move. And this really talks about Iran, because I think it's important for Americans to understand what Iran is doing, okay, and why Iran cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and why we really our interest is to create a situation where China and Russia are not motivated to assist Iran. So there's a writer named or an advocate for democratic Iran. She came over. Her name is Mariam Memar-Shadigi. Excuse me, I can't say or pronounce it right. Mariam Memar-Shadigi, okay? And she is the founder of the Cyrus Forum for Iran's Future, a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Let me just give you a little more background. She is a leading proponent for a democratic Iran. She emigrated to the U.S. as a child during the Iranian Revolution, and she is one of 43 American immigrants profiled in President George W. Bush's book, Out of Many, One. So she's Iranian. She came over here during the revolution as a child. She's a big proponent of a democratic Iran. Remember how I was just talking about the people of Iran are different than the government or the rulers of Iran. Okay. She also, check this out. See the connection? She's a correspondent, for contributor, I should say, for The Tablet. We love The Tablet. Great magazine that started out as a Jewish magazine, and now it's just covering all kinds of world. And they also say the same thing. So we have, again, here's who are we listening to? Important. Just like we took the Fox correspondent, match it to the Reuters. Okay, our information looks good. Now we're going to hear about a good, insightful approach to Iran and their role in October 7th. And she writes for The Tablet. And let's go to the article. The article is in the Hoover Institution, which we know from Victor Davis Hanson. So let me share that. So that's a good publication. All right. So I really, I know I beat the drum hard on this about where our sources are and who we're listening to, but I think it's important because I want you to have a healthy degree of trust in that what I'm saying. I'm really trying to verify and provide good information and give you the sources so you can go check yourself. Okay. And if you find something that's wrong, tell me. I am totally open. I'm open to being wrong. I just want to discover the truth. And it's not my truth. It's the truth. It's God's truth. So this is Hoover Institution. Okay. This is their a publication. It's called The Caravan. Okay. And here's an article by the woman I just, Mariam Memr-Shadigi. Okay. Who I just spoke about. The root cause of October 7, Iran's regime. This is important. See how the show flows? Right? Trump, religious liberty. Okay, to step back from that specific issue, to George Washington's letter, his beautiful letter, to our relationship with our Jewish brothers and sisters, to anti-Semitism on the rise, and the denial of the Holocaust, or the misunderstanding of the Holocaust, or lack of education about the Holocaust, to Iran enriching uranium, to stepping on the gas pedal toward a nuclear weapon, and their direct hatred for Israel. China assisting them for ballistic missiles, the axis between China, Russia, and Iran. Trump hopefully dealing with Putin, so we can be at peace. Deal with Ukraine, deal with China, get that resolved in terms of our trade relations. Which, if we have peace in those realms, then Iran gets isolated. Okay, all right. The root cause of October 7, Iran's regime. It's important to establish why Iran needs to be isolated. For students condemning Israel in protest on America's campuses, the October 7 terror attack is to be ignored, whitewashed, denied, justified, and even celebrated. To really think about the savagery and profound suffering of October 7 would elicit empathy for other humans who were Jews. So this is how she starts, that these students they're ignoring it. Okay, here we go. That was the subtitle. For students condemning Israel in protest on America's campuses, the October 7 terror attack is to be ignored, whitewashed, denied, justified, and even celebrated. To really think about the savagery and profound suffering of October 7 would elicit empathy for other humans who are Jews. To speak honestly about the killing, gang rape, mutilation of even babies, torture, scorching, public humiliation, and hostage taking would require reflection on the existential threat to the Jewish people and the state of Israel by Islamists. It would require thinking about how Islamist genocidal hatred for Jews is one and the same as the Nazi dehumanization that resulted in the Holocaust. The singular horror that forever marks mankind's capacity for evil. It would require an examination of the modern ideological drivers of such terror and the training, financing, technology, weaponry, and international propaganda needed to sustain it. Strong words. It is easier for student protesters to begin and end with their outrage with only Israel's bombing of Gaza and the suffering of Gazans. And this is just what Hamas and its backer, the Islamic Republic of Iran, intend. Remember, she's an Iranian. She left during she was born in Iran, came to America during the Iranian Revolution. Iran's regime has demonstrated its willingness to kill via execution, assassination, torture, and indiscriminate shooting on the streets of Iran, as well as through its sponsorship of terror and wars abroad, and notably through Bashar Assad's war on the Syrian nation that has taken the lives of over 500,000. For 45 years, Tehran has promulgated resistance in the name of the Palestinian people, but in reality has sacrificed the lives and livelihood of Palestinians at every turn to sustain its rule. The war that Israel has been forced to wage has resulted in the deaths of Palestinian civilians, as well as losses for Hamas, the Houthis, and other regime terror proxies. But for the Ayatollahs, these are expendable lives and proxy forces. Their quote unquote martyrdom ensures the survival of the Islamic Republic itself as a revolutionary state and an imperial Islamist project founded on hatred of Jews and Israel as oppressors. It transcends the Shia and Sunni split and even the geography of the Middle East, sending resentment and conspiratorial anti Semitic worldviews at even the most elite American universities, as evidenced by the Hezbollah flag displayed at Princeton University, not to mention the physical assault of Jewish students and persecution of Jewish professors. See? So many intelligent people out there who understand, know these situations, and are brave enough to write things like this so that we can have good information and what Iran's up to and what's really going on with Palestine and Gaza and October 7th. And then we fly above like that eagle and we get a good view. And then we put people in office that we believe can help, right? And you isolate somebody like Iran so that they have to stop because they can't get a weapon. They can't get a nuclear weapon. We can't allow that. She goes on, Israel's killing of Gazans is what Iran's regime wants. It fuels global outrage and is a propaganda victory, mobilizing opposition to the Israeli state from the most educated and privileged of the West. Liberals in the West may be united in support of Ukraine, but Israelis fighting for the very same values and right to exist are not only denied support, they are publicly shamed. Israel's war produces a universal propaganda victory for Iran's regime in the form of an illiberal, reactionary solidarity for Palestine. Secondarily, the effects in America, the great Satan, as that's what Iran calls us, the great Satan, are especially potent, including social polarization, a sense of chaos, self-loathing, cynicism, and the breakdown of respect for the university. There's not much commentary to give here because she's just powerful. This is a moral failing of the West, but one that is calculated political strategy on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran to weaken democratic states, exert its soft power, export its ideology, and buttress itself as it pursues a nuclear weapons program. See? The UN gentlemen saying they're putting their foot on the gas. They're accelerating their program. China's helping ballistic missiles. Ukraine goes on. Nuclear weapons program and expands global domination for the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Mafia overlords. These overlords and the Hamas leadership are comfortably ensconced in their luxury homes in Tehran and Dora, exulting in the damage to Israel's international image from the war they have forced upon it. Meanwhile, the Islamic Republic sells oil to China, despite U.S. sanctions, and its diplomats and lobbyists manage to shield the IRGC from terrorism designations and sanctions from the European Union, Canada, Australia, and other democratic nations. The Islamic Republic wins from both the October 7 attack itself and from Israel's response to it. The regime's supreme leader, Ali I never can say his name, was quick to celebrate the slaughter with a video on X showing young Israelis running for their lives out the outdoor Nova Music Festival. Shortly after he provided plausible deniability of any Iranian involvement, a claim President Joe Biden affirmed publicly just days after, despite reporting of the regime's direct involvement by the Wall Street Journal. An IRGC spokesman even claimed the October 7 attack was retaliation for the U.S. assassination of former Qud's former commander, before retracting the statement because of a spat with Hamas. The Biden administration has compartmentalized Hamas from its backer, the Islamic Republic, with which it continues to hold mediated bilateral negotiations that its state media has also confirmed, even after its direct bombing of Israel. I'm going to finish it. Let me see how many we got. Yeah, I'm going to keep going because she points out what needs to happen. Okay. The October 7 attack was timed to shift the focus from fundamental challenges to the survival of the decayed, inept Islamic theocracy. Theocracy. What we're not. We talk about in the beginning of the show. We don't have a state religion. Iranians' unprecedented nationwide mobilization for peaceful overthrow, the women life for freedom movement, was being brutally suppressed at home as Hamas butchered in Israel. Had the community of democratic nations seized the opportunity and found the will to support the mass uprising in Iran, rather than give mere lip service to the violation of Iranians' human rights, the seat of Islamist revolutionary terror could have been sacked, and a difficult but viable transition to a responsible, reasonable Iran at peace with Israel and the world could well have been fostered. Instead, with the October 7 attack and his IRGC henchmen sealed the indifference of Western politicians toward Iranian liberal aspirations and enabled the regime to tighten its grip on the thousands of young protesters it was torturing and raping inside its prisons. The expansion of the Abraham Accords was also in the sights of the Ayatollahs. It was imperative that a new bilateral peace between Saudi Arabia be thwarted. The shock and awe of October 7 was so severe, and Israeli response to it so massive, that it forced the Saudis to cancel overtures to the Israeli government. October 7 took the Middle East backward to a time when the world media attention on the regime was dull and flat, concerned only with the seemingly implacable anti-Israel conflict, rather than the hopeful transformation by Iranians and Saudis pressing for an entirely new future. All right. Before I finish up the last paragraph, let me take a sip. I need to wet the whistle. Okay. The Iran regime's role in the October 7 attack is fundamental and a manifestation of its daily death to Israel chants and call to wipe Israel off the map. The Biden administration, however, has chosen to minimize the fact that Hamas has been developed and directed by Tehran, deflecting scrutiny from the world's top state sponsor of terror. The appeasement mindset helped Tehran to believe it could get away with a massive terror attack on Israel in the first place. The Biden foreign policy is predicated on a worldview that seeks to end American presence in the Middle East region, has little interest in aiding democracy movements to topple authoritarians, rejects the Obama administration's as did the Obama administration, the post 9/11 vision to link democratization with security and sustainable peace in the region, sees appeasement of the Ayatollahs as means to minimize instability and its own involvement in the region, and so has lifted the maximum pressure placed on the regime by the Trump administration. But feeding the crocodile has resulted in only a bigger appetite, as the delisting of the Houthis, a first move by the Biden administration to show its willingness to please Tehran, proved quickly. On the nuclear file, too, Iran's regime has taken advantage of Washington's overtures and willingness to turn a blind eye on sanctions to up its enrichment. Everything we've been talking about. Obviously, this is written before the election of Trump, but it's good to remember what Trump is walking into. This is the situation the Biden administration has done, and Obama before him. Okay, we have to remember the deals that Trump did broker during his first term. He should have won the Nobel Prize Nobel Peace Prize. And the media bias. I mean, Obama won a Peace Prize and he didn't even do anything. Just by being elected, he earned a prize. Trump actually brokered a tremendous peace and did not receive one. The October 7 attack on Israel is part and parcel of the Islamic Republic's larger, multifaceted war on the West and liberalism. It has resulted in suffering and insecurity for the Israeli people, rising anti-Semitism across the globe, and moral confusion within democracies. Terror that should have met with global condemnation and solidarity with the Israeli people instead resulted in the proliferation of the hate projected by Iran's regime. Any policy truly designated to prevent Islamic terror and cultivate peace for the region must begin with a strategy to bring down that regime, but as evidenced by messages of condolences on the passing of the mass executioner Raisi, Western governments remain determined to appease it. I mean, that's an article. Okay. If you want to read this again for yourself, let me go up and give it to you. It's the Hoover Institution, the Caravan, and the article is called The Root Cause of October 7, Iran's Regime. And that's how it all brings it back together. And she says, and look at the end here, what she says needs to be done. It says any policy truly designated to prevent Islamic terror and cultivate peace for the region must begin with a strategy to bring down that regime. Whether the Trump administration agrees exactly with that, they know that we know that a peaceful arrangement with Russia and a peaceful arrangement with China, an increased peaceful arrangement, is going to be bad for Iran. Okay, and that Iran then, if it's isolated, will have no choice, or at least be more prone to not act out as they have, not feel empowered as they have, and to cooperate. All right, so that's it's good stuff. It's scary stuff. It's real stuff, but it's the stuff we need to look at, because we can't just look at the positive letters from George Washington and sit back and listen to poetry. We need to live out the letters of George Washington. We need to live out the dreams of Martin Luther King, right? We need to live out the creed of the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, and most importantly, what God Almighty has told us to do, right? To love our neighbors as ourselves, right? To love God with all our heart, our soul, our mind, our strength. And we must stand up to evil and not be afraid to speak. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little piece from, because I think, let me just check here. Oh, no, you know what I'll do? I'm going to do one more thing about this, and then we'll move on to a different topic, and I'll bring in a video so we can take a break. But so we have all this stage set. Trump is elected, and I think this is important. This will conclude our piece on this section here. So let me share, and this is what Trump, the reports coming out now about Trump and Iran and Middle East. Okay, so am I sharing? Yeah. Okay. Trump expected. This is from Axios. Okay, 22 hours ago, not even a day. Trump expected to ask Middle East envoy Witkoff to handle Iran diplomacy. Okay, so here's Trump comes in. This is by Barack Ravid. Witkoff with Trump at the White House. President Trump is expected to give his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, responsibility over Iran diplomacy. Okay, this is important. According to 2 U.S. officials and 2 other sources with knowledge of the issue. Why it matters. Trump's intention to give the Iran file to Witkoff, the close confidant he tasked with pushing for a historic peace deal in the Middle East, signals that the president wants to try and get a new nuclear deal with Iran before considering other options like military strikes. Witkoff already helped secure a diplomatic win for Trump when he was involved in the final push for the Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal. Israeli and Qatari officials said Witkoff's involvement was critical for concluding the deal. We have to remember something. Biden couldn't get the hostages released. Trump's elected and then says they better release them. Right? I mean, I don't know exactly what he said, right? But he basically said, better release them or else. He sends Witkoff to get involved, and what couldn't happen in a year happened in a few weeks. Update. Trump was asked during an Oval Office event whether he would pick Witkoff for the role and whether he asked Witkoff to speak directly to the Iranians. He said no, seemingly to the latter question about direct talk. So no, that that Witkoff would speak directly to the Iranians, while adding that Witkoff was certainly someone I would use and strongly praised his work on Gaza. Trump also said he hopes a deal can be reached with Iran on its nuclear program. When asked if he would support an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, he said, quote, hopefully that could be worked out without having to worry about it. It would be nice. It would really be nice if that could be worked out without having to go that further step. Of course, we know nobody wants war. Nobody wants strikes. But he's certainly not taking that off the table. And he'll move fast. Look how fast Trump's moving there. He knows. He sees the UN reports. Obviously, he sees everything. Okay? We just get an overview. We just get a report. He's got the classified reports every day. State of the play. The sources told Axios Trump hadn't made an official decision yet, but was heading toward picking Witkoff. The Financial Times first reported about Witkoff's expanding portfolio. What they're saying. In an interview with Fox News 2 weeks ago, Witkoff said Trump wants to try and get a deal with Iran. So this is what Witkoff said on Fox News 2 weeks ago. Quote, the president will not allow a bomb to be gotten by the Iranians. There it is. The president will not allow a bomb to be gotten by the Iranians. Do you believe him? I do. That's what happens when someone acts like Trump. You actually believe him. He says something, you're thinking, he says it, then he's not going to allow him. So if Iran doesn't talk and he's not removing the military option, well, we'll have to see how it plays out. Not going to happen. We're not going to that place. Hopefully we can dissolve it. We can solve it diplomatically, he also said. And the president is all about solving it diplomatically if that's possible. And if people are going to adhere to their agreements, but if not, then the alternative is not necessarily a good one, Witkoff said. So there it is. This is Witkoff 2 weeks ago. The president will not allow a bomb to be gotten by the Iranians, period. Not going to happen, period. We're not going to that place. Hopefully, we can solve it diplomatically, period. Hopefully. And the president is all about solving it diplomatically, if that's possible. And if people are going to adhere to their agreements, that's the key. You just can't make agreements like Obama and then just let them do whatever they want. They're not agreements. Then they're appeasements. Then they're just political statements to get reelected. And it just gives Iran time, which is what they need. They need time in order to develop the nuclear weapon. But if not, in other words, if they can't resolve it diplomatically and or the Iranians don't adhere to their agreement, then the alternative is not necessarily a good one. That's some way to say it. All right. Let's keep going with this. State of play. Senior diplomats from France, Germany, the UK, and the EU met with their Iranian counterparts in Geneva 10 days ago and discussed the Iran nuclear program. European diplomats told Axios the Iranians made clear in the talks that they want to resume negotiations on a new nuclear deal that will be different from the 2015 agreement from which Trump withdrew in 2018. The Iranians asked the Europeans to convey this message to Washington and stressed they are waiting for a U.S. plan or proposal, a European diplomat told Axios. The diplomat said that the European response was that it's up to Iran to put a proposal on the table that will include more concessions on the nuclear issues. All right. So, they're saying that the Iranians spoke to European diplomats saying that they want to talk about a new deal. Iranians asked Europeans to convey this message, and they're waiting for a U.S. plan. And the diplomat said the European response was that it's up to Iran to put a proposal. But this is typical Iranian stuff. Of course, they're afraid of Trump. And the first thing they're going to do is say, let's talk, which buys them time. We're waiting for your plan. European diplomats saying you should come up with the plan and present it to the U.S. And this is all about buying time. But Trump is, we can rest assured, Trump is not going to play games with them, and he's not going to wait around. And they'll get to work. And we pray that this is resolved. And at the same time, Ukraine war comes to an end. New improved relationships with Russia are established, and all at the same time, the dealings with Xi and Trump, President Xi of China and Trump, get to work on the tariff situation. So that's how he's got a three-pronged approach here. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is, before I move on to another story, a different type. So we went through this whole bird's eye view, eagle view of what's going on. And I think we got some really good information. I hope I feel better about it in terms of my knowledge and understanding of what's going on today, where we've been, where we are, all the way from George Washington to today, and our Israeli brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters, and of course, all our brothers and sisters living in China and Iran and Russia and all around the world. So I end this story with the beginning, which is we're all children of God and we want peace. The purpose is peace. Peace through strength and reality. Okay? But when we always must remind us that the religious liberty is vital, that everybody is a child of God, and that we have to separate bad regimes and governments and dictators and totalitarian regimes from the people that suffer underneath them. As that woman who wrote that strong piece reminds us. She comes over and she lives in America, and now she's writing about the situation. Okay, I'm going to play something for you. Let me play. What I'm going to play for you is a good piece on. Let me find it. It's about the New York. Let me find it here. The New York Museum for the Holocaust, and let me put it on, and then you can I can take a little break for 2 minutes, and if you're around, then you can continue to. I can't find it. Let's see. This is embarrassing. Why can't I find it? Can't find it. Oh, I got it. Okay, so this is the Jewish Museum. Okay, of Museum of Jewish Heritage. It's in New York, and they do a really. I've been there. It's a 25-year anniversary. Let me stop sharing that and put this one on. Okay, and okay, hold on.
Every day at the Statue of Liberty, which welcomed.
Okay, here we go. Let me play that, and I'll take a break, and I'll be back. Okay.
We are the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. Here at the base of Battery Park, we look out every day at the Statue of Liberty, which welcomed millions seeking a new home. As fewer survivors remain to share their stories, and with Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism on the rise, our educational mission is more important than ever. Never again is now. As a living memorial, we preserve the stories and testimonies of survivors and honor those who perished in the Holocaust. We celebrate the resilience and renewal of Jewish life before, during, and after the Holocaust, with audiences around the world. Our iconic six-sided building honors the 6 million who were murdered, and our galleries echo the Jewish star. As time passes, memory fades, and so the act of memorializing is essential. We remember to honor the past, and we teach and act for a better future. Our work is anchored in the lifelong pursuit of learning, a pillar of Jewish culture. As New York's leader in Holocaust education, we inspire people of all ages and backgrounds to think about their place in the world as citizens and human beings. Since 1997, we have welcomed over 2 million visitors, challenging them to make meaningful connections between the past and the present. We are a key education partner for public, private, Jewish, and independent schools in the 5 boroughs, reaching tens of thousands of school children each year. We meet all learners where they are, training educators of all ages, sharing the tools to convey these essential lessons in schools, virtually, and in our communities. In our galleries and beyond our walls, the survivors in our community share first-person accounts and connect across generations, building empathy and understanding. We confront the growing climate of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial by educating the public and inspiring people to action. We speak to everyone because the lessons of the Holocaust shared in our exhibition, The Holocaust, What Hate Can Do, are universal. Our new exhibition, Courage to Act, Rescue in Denmark, makes those lessons accessible to an even younger audience, teaching visitors of all ages what it means to stand up for what is right. In our garden of stones, trees grow from seedlings planted in boulders by Holocaust survivors and their families in 2003. This space of contemplation illuminates the life cycles we all face and the ability to flourish in bounded places. We are an ever-growing...
Okay, so that's I'm going to stop there. So, great museum. I've been there before, and I can't believe it's 25 years. I remember when it opened. These museums are really important. You know, if you're in Europe and you can go to one of the camps, it's certainly not a joyful experience to go to the camps, but it drives the point home of what how far hate can go. And these museums that are around all around the world, most major cities have one. Of course, there's a national one in Washington D.C., but the one in New York is outstanding. And we have to educate our children in the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because we have to be aware. Never forget. Okay. I'm going to cover one more story today. And let me bring it up. Here we go. So this is from the Daily Wire. Okay. And this is where, we began with this reference. And then we went on the path of Israel and Iran. And now I'm going to share with this. Okay. It's the Daily Wire. Okay. It's about Trump's pardons. So here we go. The Daily Wire reports they should not have been prosecuted. Trump pardons 23 pro-lifers targeted by Biden DOJ. You know what? I didn't know about this. I heard a little bit, but I didn't realize the extent of it. And I think that's why, again, when I find something that shocks me, I'm like, I think I pay attention to things. I said, I better point this out because, again, as Trump moves forward and these executive orders kind of clean up the mess as fast as possible in order for him to launch forward, we have to remember what the situation was that he found himself in. This is a great honor to sign this, the president said. This is by Mary Margaret Olahan and Leif Lee Mahu. This is January 23rd, 2025, Daily Wire. Okay? President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday pardoning 23 of the pro-life activists targeted by President Joe Biden's Justice Department. They should not have been prosecuted, Trump said as he signed the order. Many of them are elderly people. They should not have been prosecuted. This is a great honor to sign this. The pardons are for 23 peaceful pro-life protesters who were prosecuted by the Biden administration for exercising their First Amendment rights. They were prosecuted under the FACE, F-A-C-E Act, and a Reconstruction-era felony conspiracy charge first used for the first time against pro-life activists by the Biden administration. The Thomas More Society, the law firm representing the activists, had asked Trump to pardon 21 pro-lifers, and they got the names. I'm not going to read them all. Today, freedom rings in our great nation, said Steve Crampton, senior counsel for the Thomas More Society. The heroic, peaceful pro-lifers unjustly imprisoned by Biden's Justice Department will now be freed and able to return home to their families, eat a family meal, and enjoy the freedom that should have never been taken from them in the first place. Listen to this. This is really crazy. Peter Breen, the executive vice president of the firm, added, "Today is a new day for the pardoned pro-life activists who had suffered FBI raids, federal prosecutions, and severe punishment for peacefully and courageously witnessing for life. We thank President Trump for keeping his promise to these pro-life mothers, fathers, grandparents, pastors, and priests. What happened to these peaceful pro-life individuals must never happen again," he said in the statement. "We urge Congress to act swiftly in repealing the FACE Act to make sure that the department Justice Department can never again weaponize this law to target peaceful pro-lifers with severe charges. Listen to what they did to these people. And then remember the riots, right? Over the Black Lives Matter riots and the Antifa riots and how much destruction, and right? And not prosecuted. And these people were. Many of those pardoned were convicted multiple times in trials in Washington, D.C., Nashville, Manhattan, and Detroit. While sentencing has not been completed in each case, several pro-lifers were already serving lengthy prison sentences. In D.C., a group of pro-life protesters sang songs, prayed, locked arms in front of the facility's staff entrance, and attached themselves with ropes and chains to block doors inside the infamous Surgery Clinic in October 2020, a late-term abortion facility. Those who were imprisoned over the D.C. protest include Lauren Handy, 57 months in prison. 57 months. John Hinshaw, 21 months. William Goodman, 27 months. Jonathan Darnell, 34 months. Herb Gerardi, 27 months. Gene Marshall, 24 months. Joan Bell, 27 months. Paulette Harlow, 24 months. And Heather Idoni, 24 months. In Tennessee, a group of pro-life Christians gathered in a hall outside the Carafem Health Center in Mount Juliet, where they sang hymns, prayed, and urged women not to get abortion in March 2021. Calvin Zastrow, 63, is currently serving a 6-month sentence over the protests, and 75-year-old Chester Gallagher was sentenced to 16 months, though he has not yet to report to prison. In New York, Beverly Williams, this is crazy. In New York, Betty Williams was sentenced to serve 41 months in prison. 41 months in prison after she was convicted of violating the FACE Act after she blocked the entrance to an abortion facility in Manhattan. They were blocking entrances. They weren't violent. The pardons should also bring relief to those who were awaiting sentencing. Listen to this. This is incredible. Including 89-year-old Eva Edel. 89-year-old. She's awaiting sentencing. 89-year-old. Listen to this. Eva Edel, who survived a World War II era Yugoslavian concentration camp, was convicted in both Nashville and Detroit and could have been sentenced to over a decade in prison over her convictions on FACE and felony conspiracy charge. Do you see how these stories that I really do love our Lord? I love that he inspires. And there it is. So as we go into the direct story about the news and Trump pardoning these pro-life, peaceful pro-life protesters who received outrageous prison terms, when so many other crimes we can list don't even get prosecuted by Soros-type DAs, and these people are being put in jail, that one of the women that was pardoned, who has been waiting sentencing, is an 89-year-old. And here's the connection to the rest of the day, who survived a World War II era Yugoslavian concentration camp. It's crazy. When passed in 1994, the FACE Act was supposed to protect both churches and clinics, but the law has almost exclusively been used to prosecute pro-lifers. Data obtained by ROY shows that 97% of FACE Act cases brought by the Justice Department have been against pro-life Americans. 97%. So they're supposed to protect the clinics and the churches. Okay. But 97% of FACE Act cases brought by the Justice Department have been against pro-life Americans. Senator Mike Lee, great Senator Mike Lee, Republican Utah, and Chip Roy, Republican Texas, renewed an effort to repeal the FACE Act this week, pointing out how it has been disproportionately used against pro-lifers. Outrageous. Disgusting. The Justice Department of the Biden is just disgusting. The response to the pardons has already been positive, with Republican lawmakers and conservative activists praising the decision. This is why we need this, guys. So when this comes in front of Congress and we hear about it, we have some context. So we need to repeal this, okay? So there, let's see. They will, Mike Lee and Chip Roy, an effort to repeal the FACE Act this week. President Trump's pardon today of pro-life activists unjustly imprisoned under President Biden is a great credit to his legacy. Catholic votes, Tommy Valentine said. We hope he will go a step further in undoing Biden's a Catholic, unjust legacy. So Catholic, that's what he calls himself. Legacy by directing his Department of Justice to evenly enforce FACE Act for as long as it is on the books. So if it's on the books, they're saying to enforce it evenly against violent pro-abortion extremists who have been attacking pregnancy resource centers and churches for years. See, 97% was against pro-life people, not using it to prosecute pro-abortion extremists who have been attacking pregnancy resource centers and churches for years. The news came shortly after the Daily Wire reported that Trump would pardon the pro-life activists within a matter of days. The plight of the imprisoned pro-lifers is an immediate priority to Trump's team. Two sources with knowledge of the matter shared with the Daily Wire. Friday is the 53rd annual March for Life, where Vice President J.D. Vance, don't you love to hear that? Vice President J.D. Vance will publicly speak for the first time since he was sworn into office, as the Daily Wire first reported on Thursday. All right? So there you go. I want to give some credit to the Thomas More Society because these are kind of organizations out there that go under the radar, you don't hear about. And then, things like this happen, and they've been fighting. So I looked them up this morning because they're kind of organizations like this. I'm not fully into. I only looked them up a little bit, so I share it with you, and you're free to look at them more closely. Certainly seems like a great organization, and so it's important when we support either through reading articles or when it comes to nonprofits donating, giving charity. It's important to know that there are great organizations out here. So this organization, let me pull it up. It's the Thomas More Society, and let me just share it with you because I want to give them a nod. So here we go. This is the Thomas More Society, and President Trump pardons 23 pro-lifers targeted by Biden Justice Department under the FACE Act. Okay, so they have the same news story, but this is their society. They're the ones who are advocating. They're a group of lawyers, and they offer services to people who are pro-life and protesting and any legal help they may need. And the other part that I want to share with you is they have a great video about the founding. But they also talk about who Thomas More is, and let's look at Thomas More for a second. Let's look at some history, okay? Let's because Thomas More is somebody that it's let's see there. Okay, there he is. Okay, so Thomas More Society is named after Thomas More. He's a saint, and Thomas More is somebody that we should talk to about with our kids. Man for All Seasons was the great play written about his life. And my daughter went to watch that play last year. They read the book, they read the play, and then they went to see the book. And they read the book, they went to see the play, and she was really impressed. But let's look at Thomas More for a second, who they named it after. Okay, Sir Thomas More, defender of religious liberty and patron saint of lawyers. St. Thomas More was born in London. As the son of a lawyer, he followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a skilled attorney himself. He was also a deeply pious Catholic and an accomplished philosopher. Recognized for his talents, More served Henry VIII as Lord High Chancellor of England from 1529 to 1533. Despite his demanding career, More remained a devoted father, writing thoughtful letters to his children and overseeing their education. More opposed Henry VIII's separation from the Catholic Church, proclaiming himself the good king's servant, but God's first. There it is. First things first. Proper ordering of things, right? What you must order your life. What comes God? God is first. Then, okay, king's servant, husband, God first. God. More refused to take the oath of supremacy. In response, the king imprisoned him, tried him for treason, and sentenced him to death. While hundreds of other noblemen sided with the king to save their own lives, More would not betray his conscience, and he was executed. He was beheaded. Canonization by Pope Pius XI and canonized by Pope Pius XI in 1935. Moore is now the patron saint of lawyers. He continues to inspire our mission to defend truth, justice, and the rights of conscience, just as he did centuries ago. So there it is. There's a living, breathing organization named after a true saint whose conscience, he wouldn't go against his conscience. He wasn't going to go against God. He believed in papal supremacy in the Catholic Church and Henry VIII breaking away and starting his own church and naming himself the head of the Church of England, was something that Moore couldn't go with. And there's a very famous, I don't have it up here, but there's if you want to take a second to look it up, there's a letter that Moore writes to his daughter right before he's executed. And it's really quite something. The fortitude of this, the strength, we don't see this as much anymore, right? We do see people die for their causes, right? But this the temptation just to give in, right? But he didn't. He went to his death because the good king's servant, but God's first. All right, so I like it. All right, and it brings us to our last part of the day. It brings us back to Imprimis, right, where we started, where we got George Washington's letter from. And there is an incredible piece written by Bishop Robert Barron. Right, Bishop Robert Barron is he's a very popular bishop in the Catholic Church. I think he's somebody to really look at if you want to see what a really strong Catholic will do. He is the bishop of the Diocese of Minnesota. I believe he's been named bishop of. I think he might have been moved from different dioceses now, and founder of the Word on Fire Catholic Ministries. Right, he's a big media guy, okay, and he's a great thinker and he's very articulate. And he went to Hillsdale for the commencement, for the graduation. He gave the commencement address, the 2023 commencement address, and this was June 2023. And I'm going to go through it. It's fantastic. It's really inspiring. I'm going to take a second. I'm going to have a sip of my coffee, and then we're going to go through this. The most important decision in life. That's what it's called. So let me share it with you. Okay. Check our time. Okay. And here it is. The most important Imprimis. Right back to Imprimis. First Things. Publication by Hillsdale. The most important decision in life, Bishop Robert Barron, Word on Fire, Catholic Ministries, 2023 commencement address. The following is adapted from a speech delivered on May 13, 2023 at Hillsdale's 171st commencement ceremony. Okay. I will take a sip and I will begin. Here we go. Congratulations to the Hillsdale College of Class of 2023. It is a thrill to be here at Hillsdale, which I have heard about for a long time. Last night, I had a wonderful tour of the campus, and the evening culminated in a concert in your beautiful chapel. The concert included Mahler's First Symphony, played by the student orchestra, and was just marvelous. When I was a theology professor, I taught a course on the Reformation for many years, taking seriously the works of Luther and Calvin and other reformers. I believe the questions the reformers raised, questions that still divide the churches, are important. But right now, all of us who believe in God and are disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ have a common enemy in agnosticism, atheism, and nihilism that are deeply affecting our culture and especially the minds of young people. I believe it is important for us to join together in common cause against this common enemy. And it is in that spirit that I come before you today. He's very good. And it is true. All believers in Jesus have to come together. All believers in God have to come together. God being all good and all loving for peace and truth and beauty. It is also the permanent honor of this college that it was founded almost 180 years ago by Free Will Baptists who were committed to the abolition of slavery. Hillsdale founders were on the right side of the most compelling moral debate of the 19th century, and it is worth remarking that the leadership of this college today finds itself on the right side of the most pressing ethical argument of our time, namely the protection of the unborn. There it is, tied together with Trump pardoning the pro-lifers who were prosecuted by the Biden Justice Department, right? For religious, they were expressing peacefully expressing themselves, and using a law that unfairly 97% against pro-lifers and not against people who are attacking clinics or churches. Frederick Douglass, a former slave who became one of the most eloquent advocates for abolition in the 19th century, spoke here in 1863, just after the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. In the course of his lecture, Popular Error and Unpopular Truth, he remarked, "There is no such thing as new truth. Error might be old or new, but truth is as old as the universe." There it is. Great Frederick Douglass, right? Great book to read, his autobiography. Frederick Douglass. There's only one truth. There's only one. There's only one truth. At the heart of the Hillsdale College curriculum is a presentation of these truths, epistemic, moral, and aesthetic, that are indeed as old as the universe, permanent things that participate in the eternity of God. What I should like to do briefly in this commencement address is examine just one of these truths, which is articulated over and over again in the great Western intellectual tradition. It is typically assessed by means of a question, not the question of what we are to do, as important as that is, but rather what kind of person we ought to be. Do we hunger and thirst for righteousness, or do we seek our own advantage? In a way, there is no question in the moral and spiritual order more fundamental than that. There it is. Let's ask ourselves, do we hunger and thirst for righteousness, or do we seek our own advantage? A locus calicus for studying this question is found in Plato's Gorgias. In the dialogue, the character Gorgias is a sophist, which is to say an expert in teaching the art of persuasive speech. Polus and Callicles are his students. Their concern is not being truthful or just, but rather speaking in a way that they appear truthful or just, and hence become convincing to others. Such sophists were obviously enormously useful to prospective lawyers and politicians in ancient Greece, and it should be equally obvious that their intellectual descendants are rather thick on the ground today. All right, so sophist, right? The art of convincing, not of truth, not of justice, but the art of convincing, whether it's true or just. Socrates counters Gorgias and his students along these lines. If a rhetorician teaches a politician to do what is unjust, he does that man and his city far more harm than good. To this Polus answers by means of a taunt. Wouldn't Socrates leap at the opportunity of having the power of life and death over others? No, Socrates says in response, for to put someone to death unjustly is in fact no power at all. And it is at this point that Socrates enunciates one of his most enduring teachings, a teaching that represents a watershed in the moral consciousness of the West. It is better, he says, to suffer wrongdoing than to do wrong oneself. Right? The idea of acting unethical or immoral from a leadership position is worse than having something done to yourself. And that's why death penalty, right? Many times we have to be very, very careful with that. It's a whole issue in itself, and I won't go into it. But at this point, Callicles can no longer restrain himself. Giving clear voice to a position that endures to the present day, he says that what Socrates is calling justice is nothing but the constraints placed on the few strong by the many weak. It is a sort of guilt trip imposed by the powerless to limit the capacity of the powerful to get what they want. If you notice a tight connection between this point of view and the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, you're not wrong. Socrates' argument for this position is simple. Surely suffering injustice is terrible, but what is worse is the corrosion of soul that takes place when one commits injustice. In other words, being unjust is far more damaging to the moral structure of a person's character than enduring the slings and arrows of injustice. There it is, right? Thomas More. It's Biden administration, the censorship. manipulation of the social media to deplatform people, the weaponization of the Department of Justice, the unjust use of the pardon, presidential pardons. It does more harm to the person doing the injustice. His claim is to the person who's impacted by the injustice, because the corrosion of the soul. You can have an injustice happen to you and keep your soul clean, like Thomas More. Injustice happened to him, but by him staying a man of integrity, his soul wasn't corroded. But Henry VIII was by his act of naming him himself the head of the church, and by the act of sentencing this man of integrity and pure heart to death and going through with it and executing him. So there's the question, young graduates, and the question to all of us: what kind of soul will you have? What kind of person will you be? Will you do whatever it takes to get what you want, or will you accept even great suffering in order to do what is right? Everything else in your life will flow from your answer to that question. I know that Hillsdale College is committed to the study of Greco-Roman intellectual tradition. Yeah, right? That's us. And it is for this reason that I commence with Plato. But Hillside is also and above all committed to the scriptures. The Bible gets at the very same issue, not so much through philosophical argumentation, but through the prophetic language of idolatry and right worship. Here we go. For the biblical authors, it is never a question of religion versus secularism. First of all, they were not trading in what we call religion. And secondly, they knew that there really is no pure secularism. Rather, they understood that the world is basically divided between those who worship the one true God and those who indulge in idolatry or false worship. Even in our supposedly secular society, we can appreciate the appropriateness of the biblical terminology. For everyone, even the most unchurched, operates under the aegis of something he or she considers supreme, a summum bonum, or highest good. No one would get out of bed in the morning unless he believed in some value that is ultimately motivating his actions and decisions. This might be bodily pleasure or fame or material goods, or it might be one's country or family. But if it is functioning as the prime mover of a person's activity, it is playing the role of a god, and it is being in effect worshipped. Great point. So the biblical form of the question we have been considering is, whom or what do you worship? Again, everything in your life will flow from your answer. There are numberless biblical texts that are relevant to this question, but I should like to look at a particular clarifying and dramatic one, namely the scene described in the first book of Kings regarding Elijah and the priest of Baal. We recall the setting. Elijah had called out King Ahab for his worship of the false gods proposed by his wife Jezebel. He subsequently challenged the avatars of these deities to a kind of duel on Mount Carmel. Standing alone against the 450 devotees of Baal, Elijah proposed that he and they should erect altars to their respective deities and see who would respond. All morning long, the priest cried out, "Oh, Baal, answer us." But the Bible says there was no voice and no answer. At this point, Elijah mocked them. "Cry aloud, surely he is a god. Either he is meditating, or he has wandered away, or he is on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened." In their frenzy and frustration, the priests of Baal proceeded to cut themselves with swords and lances until the blood gushed out over them, but it was to no avail. Then, of course, Elijah calls out to the Lord in fireballs, consuming the sacrifice and vindicating the prophet. What I would like to emphasize is that this is much more than a jingoistic story of my God is bigger than your God. In point of fact, it is an incomparably rich presentation of the dynamics of true and false worship. The altar erected to Baal should be taken as standing for all the ways in which we order the infinite longing of our hearts to something less than God. We call it inordinate, right? It's not ordered properly. We have to always be ordered properly, like Moore says, God first. Servant of the king, but God first. When we do this, the fire never falls, because merely worldly things cannot, even in principle, satisfy our hungry souls. And when we persist in worshiping falsely, we find ourselves in short order, caught in an addictive pattern, hoping obsessively, as it were, hopping excessively, as it were, around the altar of pleasure, power, and fame, desperately seeking a satisfaction that will never come. And it brings me right back to my original point this morning about reading about the intellectual life, and that we have to pursue any vocation, any calling with a pure heart. We have to look at it and say, am I doing this to become famous? Am I doing this to get attention, bells and whistles? Or am I doing it for the true and pure pursuit of truth because God has called me to pursue truth, goodness, and wisdom? All right. The self-harm inflicted by the hapless priest of Baal speaks eloquently to the self-destructive quality which any addict can attest. Only when the fondest desire of the soul is directed to the infinite God, goodwill, the God will, the fire fall and the addiction will be avoided. So once again, young graduates, the question is simple. At which altar will you worship? Your whole life will unfold for will or for woe from that decision. If we would like to see the place where Plato and Elijah come together, we need look no further than the cross of Jesus, which St. Paul described as a divine weakness stronger than human strength and a divine folly wiser than human wisdom. Where could we find a clearer instigation of the principle that it is better to suffer injustice than to commit it than in Jesus crucified? Sinless, blameless, he nevertheless took upon himself all the sin of the world, hatred, cruelty, stupidity, violence, institutional corruption, betrayal, denial, all of it. But rather than lashing out and answering violence, he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Laboring until the full weight of human wickedness, his soul remained inviolate. And this is why, to the consternation of all the advocates of might makes right, from Calasses to Nietzsche, we hold up the cross and say, Ecce homo, behold the true man. Okay? Ecce. Behold the true man. Look at the cross. Stare at the cross. Ask Jesus to preach to you from the cross. And you begin to say, I love you, Jesus. And everything falls into place. Everything that's disordered becomes ordered. Put God first. And from that proper ordering will rain down grace and peace and joy and perspective and acceptance, peaceful acceptance. He finishes with this great piece by Bishop Barron. My intellectual hero, St. Thomas Aquinas, said that if we want to live a happy life, we should love what Jesus loved on the cross and despise what he despised on the cross. What did he despise but all of those objects of false worship to which we tend to erect altars? Many of us worship wealth, but on the cross he was utterly poor, stripped naked. Many of us worship pleasure, but on the cross he was at the limit of suffering, both physically and psychological. Many of us worship power, but on the cross he was nailed in place, unable to even move. And many of us worship honor, but on the terrible cross he was the object of scorn and ridicule. In short, the crucified Lord said no as radically as possible to the idols. But what did he love on the cross? He loved doing the will of the Father. The cross itself functions as the altar on which the sacrifice of his life to the Father took place, and this is why the fire fell. The pure heart, the right intention, the proper ordering of our life, standing beneath God, looking up at him, acknowledging the goodness, the truth, the wisdom, the love, the providence, his divine good pleasure, that if we just submit to his will, we will find joy, a joy that's inexplicable, not happiness, not chuckles and laughs. We may laugh and be happy, of course, but the joy which is that deep alignment to the will of God, even when situations aren't good. I've said this before, to add to what Barron is saying. If you look at Jesus on the cross, you see the man who's been most at peace in the history of the world. You say, most at peace, he's being crucified. Yes, if we define peace as smiles and comfort and physical comfort and psychological, no, he's not at peace. But if we define peace as the soul of a human aligned with the will of God, which leads to the ultimate joy beyond bliss that cannot be explained, in a sense, heaven on earth. When our will is aligned with the will of the Father's on earth, it's heaven on earth. The kingdom is at hand, is within reach. The kingdom lies within. Jesus, under all those horrible circumstances that appear to have no peace in them, was the most peaceful man to ever exist at that moment because he was 100% completely aligned with the will of the Father. So how do we define peace? Is it the superficial peace, or is it the deepest level of peace of the alignment of the Father's love, which results in a joy and bliss that's inexplicable and is really heaven here on earth? So when you wonder heaven lies within, the kingdom is at hand, that's what it means. It's exactly what it means. The 1966 film A Man for All Seasons, based on Robert Bolt's play, right, here it is, here's my connection, tells the story of St. Thomas More, a well-acquainted with the philosophies of classical antiquity and a man in love with the Lord Jesus. One of the last scenes of the film depicts a dramatic trial of More under accusation for high treason. Richard Rich, who as a young man had been Thomas's More friend and protege, falsely testifies against him, perjuring himself and practically guaranteeing that More will receive the death penalty. As Rich is leaving the courtroom, More notices that the younger man is wearing a chain of office. Inquiring of the judges what the symbol at the end of the chain means, More receives the answer, quote, "Sir, Richard is appointed Attorney General for Wales." More grasps a pendant and with a look of more pitying than indignant comments, "Why, Richard? It profits a man nothing to give his soul for the whole world. But for Wales?" More was not so much blaming Rich as noticing with infinite sadness the kind of person he had become, a man with a corroded soul. See, trading his honor, falsely testifying against somebody in order to get a worldly position. You trade heaven for earth. Well, we need to trade earth for heaven. And the irony is, if we trade earth for heaven, we actually get joy on earth. we can be so dumb, so blind, so disordered, all of us. It might have been otherwise. In a lesser known scene from the earlier in the film, More suggests, this is really, really, really important, really good. Read this and put yourself in the scene. More suggests Rich pursue a job as a humble teacher, but Rich, it's funny his name's Rich, ambitious for glory at the king's court, balks. The wise More says, "You'd be a fine teacher, perhaps a great one." His protege retorts angrily, "If I was, who would know it?" More patiently responds, "You, your pupils, your friends, God. Not a bad public, that." This exchange provides us a third way of asking our question. To which audience, finally, are you playing? A lost soul plays to the endlessly fickle audience of the world, hoping thereby to acquire the fleeting goods that the world can provide. The uncorroded soul plays to God and to the friends of God, seeking to please them alone. John Paul II, in his writings on the moral life, observed that in every particular ethical choice a person makes, he is doing two things simultaneously. He is performing a moral act with definite consequences, and he is making his character, crafting little by little the person he's becoming. I love the confident hope that your years at Hillsdale College have prepared you, above all, to shape your characters, to become the kind of men and women who would endure injustice rather than commit injustice, who would never dream of worshiping at the altar of an idol, and who wouldn't surrender the integrity of your souls for the whole world. If you become the person God intends you to be, you will exceed in lighting a fire upon the earth. There it is, last line. If you become the persons God intends you to be, you will succeed in lighting a fire upon the earth. And that's to all of us. I mean, I think what I love about this is how all this really ties together to my original reading of this little book, right? And this is what I'll end with. I'll read the same thing I read because it's just what Bishop Barron is saying, what Thomas More lived out. And it's this: if you come to the intellectual life or any vocation with selfish motives, not through ambition or foolish vanity. The jingling bells of publicity tempt only frivolous minds. Ambition offends eternal truth by subordinating truth to itself. Is it not a sacrilege to play with the questions that dominate life and death, with mysterious nature, with God, to achieve some literary or philosophical celebrity at the expense of the true and independently of the true? Such aims, and especially the first mentioned, would not sustain the seeker. His effort would speedily be seen as to slacken, his vanity to fall back on some empty satisfaction with no care for the reality of things. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for being with me. There's a lot there. I really encourage you, if you have any interest in these, I gave you the names of the publications. Imprimis, fantastic. Hillsdale, fantastic. All right. Pray for the world, for world peace. Pray for Donald Trump. Whether you like him or not, pray for him because he is in charge. Pray for peace in Ukraine. And when I say pray, I'm not telling you. Actually, I take that back. Let's pray. Of course, I'm praying myself, and I invite you to pray with me. We pray for peace. We pray for our Jewish brothers and sisters, and the elimination of anti-Semitism around the world, and that we can all live like George Washington's beautiful letter, right? What did he say? This is what the last line, I promise. George Washington, in his letter, he said, in his letter to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island. Here it is. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while every one shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. May the Father of all mercy scatter light and not darkness in our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here, and in our own time, due time and way, everlastingly happy. Everything's tied together. Washington. Thomas More, The Intellectual Life, God, the Holocaust Museums, the Truth. I love you. We'll be good. Have a great day. It's Friday. I'll see you Monday. Have a beautiful weekend. Take care.